It was a Saturday morning, the middle of football season my senior year, 2 days before my 17th birthday. I was lying in bed, and I was half asleep, debating whether or not I wanted to go downstairs and, make Lucky Charms. And someone started coming up the stairs, and I thought it was my little sister. The door opened, someone sat on my bed, and I opened my eyes, and it was my high school girlfriend. And she looked me square in the face and said, "I'm pregnant." So I woke right up. And the two of us spent that day trying to figure out what we were going to do. We were just children, young adults, and now we had a grown-up situation. And I had dreams of college football and beyond, and Katie had her own dreams. But that day we realized something had changed. And so we came up with a plan. I knew of a program where you could go right out of high school into the Army because a friend of mine did it. And I said, I'm going to go down to the recruiter's office on my birthday, which was in 2 days, and join the Army. I'll go off to basic training, and we'll come back and tell your parents. And Katie said, okay, and I'll wear baggy sweaters and take vitamins until you get back. And that was the plan. And that's what we did. So on my birthday, I went down to the recruiter's office in my leather jacket. I probably looked like a good student and said, I want to join the Army. And he said, this program's not for everyone. This program is only for delinquents. I said, I'm last in my class out of 565 kids. Got 80 hours of detention in 8 weeks. He said, I think you might qualify. And he gave me a sheet of paper. He said, if your principal signs this and your mother signs this, we'll get you right into basic training. So I took the form to my principal, and she looked at it, and she looked at me, and she said, if I sign this, I'll never see you again? I said, never. Here you go. Have a good life. It's going to be hard. My mother is a single mom, 5 children. She didn't ask too many questions. I don't think she thinks I was serious. Maybe I was testing her. And she signed it. Well, a couple weeks later, on a Saturday morning again, the recruiter came to pick me up to take me to Fort Benning, Georgia, take me to O'Hare Airport, and off to Fort Benning, Georgia I was going to go. The recruiter called me and said, you need a suitcase with toothpaste, toothbrush, socks, and underwear, yada, yada, and I'll be there at 9 a.m. And so I ran around my house. We didn't have a lot of money. We never went on trips, and I panicked to discover we didn't own a suitcase. So I thought, they're not going to let me join the Army. I don't own a suitcase. And I called the recruiter. I don't own a suitcase. What am I going to do? He said, use your pillowcase. So I went to my room, and my pillowcase was still a Scooby-Doo pillowcase. So I went to my sister's room, strawberry shortcake, and so I decided to go with Scooby-Doo, put my socks, underwear, toothpaste, toothbrush in the pillowcase, and off I went to Fort Benning, Georgia. The first Sunday I was there, they said, we need 2 formations. Catholics in this formation, Protestants in this formation. And I never went to church a day in my life, and so I really didn't even understand the question. And I looked at both formations, and I said, well, I have blonde hair and blue eyes. I think I'm Protestant. And so I got in the Protestant formation with the Lutherans, and off we marched to church. I'd never been to church, and I thought, I don't want to sit still for an hour ever again. This is like high school. So the next Sunday when we lined up for formation, I had this vision of me just being in the barracks all day alone. And so I said to the drill sergeant, this is America. Separation of church and state. You can't make me go to church. I'm just going to stay back here. And he said, you're right, Private Jones. And thank you for volunteering for extra duty every Sunday from now until graduation. You have pots and pans detail. Nobody wanted to clean pots and pans. So I was sent to this workstation, and every Sunday I had to clean pots and pans. But what I discovered is that the drill sergeants, they hoarded the ice cream bars that were probably meant for us, and they had put them in this freezer by my station. And so what I would do is I would take buckets, fill them with ice, and stick the ice cream bars in there. And when soldiers came back from church, I would say, who wants to shine my shoes on Monday? Ice cream bar. Tuesday, ice cream bar. Wednesday, who's making my bed? Ice cream bar. Who's polishing my brass? Ice cream bar. So one day of extra detail meant I didn't have to polish my brass, shine my shoes, or make my bed all week. It was a really good deal. And your religious education instructor over here, your morality, I think that's junior year, sophomore year, is giving me a dirty look. But see, in the Army, that's not considered stealing. That's securing. The drill sergeants left the ice cream unsecure. I secured it. And I was an atheist anyway, so what really mattered, right? We had 2 weeks to go before graduation. And I was in the infantry, so advanced and basic training are together. So I had 2 weeks to go before I was going home. It was now 7 months after conception. I have to tell you, I thought of my high school girlfriend and this baby every day. That's what drove me. I was raised in a broken home. I was the oldest, and whenever anything crazy went on in our household, I would just sit there. I mean, at 5 and 6 years old, I'd imagine when I'm a parent, this is the kind of home I'm going to have for my family. And so I was just thinking about that. And we only had really paperwork and processing to do. It was a Sunday morning. I was cleaning pots and pans, waiting for an opportunity to secure ice cream. And a friend came running in and he said, "Jones, come out here and answer the phone. Your girlfriend called and she's crying." Well, I wasn't supposed to be taking phone calls, but I ran out and I answered the phone, and Katie was crying like I have never heard a woman cry in my life. And the only way I can explain it to you is that her soul was crying. And she kept saying over and over and over again, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." And then her father said over the other line, "Jason, we know your secret, and your secret's gone. I took Katie to get an abortion." As soon as he said the word abortion, a drill sergeant hung up the phone over my shoulder. I wasn't supposed to be on the phone. I punched him. Another drill sergeant grabbed me by my collar, and I was just crying. "Call the police, he killed my baby." They dragged me into my captain's office, and they threw me into a chair. And my captain was a big Army Ranger, and he just began to cry, looking at me. He said, "Private, what happened?" I just kept yelling, "Call the police. My girlfriend's father killed my baby." And with the phone in his hand, he said, "Explain to me what happened." And as I explained it, he said, "Why would I call the police? Don't you know abortion is legal?" And now this is spring of 1989. And I didn't. I was last in my class, not because I was brilliant. I was uninformed. I knew the basics of human development. I knew that this murder took place to a delicate, vulnerable child against my will and the will of my high school girlfriend, but I did not know it was legal. It was shocking and unimaginable to me. And I wish the whole world could see abortion the way that this uneducated, irreligious high school dropout saw abortion, in the way that I still do. It was really unimaginable. My captain was very sympathetic, and he gave me a roll of quarters. He said, "I can't have you disturbing the whole battalion, so I want you to walk down to the PX and comfort your girlfriend." And so I walked to the PX, and I called her, and I tried to comfort her, but I just listened to her cry through an entire roll of quarters. And I would say something here or there to try to comfort her, and she would just cry and cry and cry for an hour and a half. And when the mechanical voice said, "Please deposit 60 cents, you have no more change," and I was out of quarters. And Katie was crying as much at the end of this call as she had been at the beginning. I remember just thinking, say something to comfort her, to stop her from crying. And so I just blurted out, "Katie, I promise you that if it takes me the rest of my life, I'm going to end abortion for our daughter Jessica." And we know that our baby was a girl because the abortionist at Chicago Masonic Hospital, who performed the forced third trimester abortion, said to her after the procedure, "By the way, you had a little girl." So we named her Jessica, and if you watch the film I made with Patty Millett, Crescendo, which we put on YouTube for the world to see, at the very end it says, "In loving memory of Jessica Jones." And now I know that by myself I can't keep that promise. I wrote goals as a 17-year-old high school dropout. I'm going to run political campaigns. I've had the privilege of running political campaigns from the State House to the White House. I'm going to make movies that change public opinion, and I've had the privilege of making movies that have been very successful on the life issue. But I'm not naive to think now that I alone can keep the promise to protect the most vulnerable members of the human family from the violence of abortion myself. I can't keep that promise alone. But I want to tell you about another promise. When I got out of the Army, I went to the University of Hawaii. I was stationed in Hawaii. Now you have to see, I was a high school dropout, I went into the infantry, and now I get out of the Army and I'm in college. And I was very insecure because my whole life I was told by my teachers I was lazy, I was stupid. You're not college material. And college recruiters came to look for me, and my counselor was actually offended and brought me in to complain that college recruiters wanted to ask about me. And so I was insecure about being in school, and it was my first semester, and I was in Philosophy 101, Logic. And I was the student who took every class and wanted to turn it into a discussion about whatever I felt like talking about. Do you guys have students like that here? Right? Well, I wanted to talk about, in college, abortion every class. And Logic 101 seemed like a perfect class to turn every class into a discussion on abortion. So I sat in the front row because I was last in my class, and I ordered a cassette tape that I saw on TV called Where There's a Will, There's an A. And it said, if you want to be a good student, sit in the front. I used to always sit in the back, so I'm going to sit in the front. So I'm sitting in the front, turning class discussion about abortion, and these 3 girls started whipping paper at the back of my head. They were Hawaiian girls. And they were like, Haole boy, shut up. Haole boy, shut up. Stop talking about abortion. Haole is a Hawaiian word, it means white boy. Now my kids are Filipino Chinese, I call them jalapenos. And I live on the west side of Oahu now with my wife and 7 kids, and my 7 jalapenos. But they would throw paper at the back of my head, and so, it's embarrassing. So I finally said, I turned around, I said, listen, girls, stop throwing paper. I'm gonna make you a deal. I don't even want to engage in a discussion with the professors on abortion. I'm just doing that to change your opinions on abortion, because I just don't want anyone in my class to have an abortion. So I'm engaging the professor in a debate to change your opinions. So let's cut to the chase. If you each promise me right now in front of the whole class you'll never have an abortion ever, I will never talk about abortion again. And the first girl was like, Haole boy, I'll never have an abortion. Second girl, I'll never have an abortion. And the third girl, she just wasn't going to give in, and she just stared at me. She said, okay, Haole boy, I'll never have an abortion. I said, 1 out of 3 women has an abortion. It's going to be you. It's going to be you. I want you to remember what you just said, and you didn't make a promise to me. You made a promise to your child. Keep that promise. And that was that, and the semester went on, school went on, and then several years later, after I graduated, I'm walking down the street in Waikiki. When I was going to grad school, I worked at Duke's Canoe Club. If you ever go to Hawaii, you got to go to Duke's Canoe Club. And I was walking to work, and I hear, Haole boy. And I turn around, and it's the girl from Logic 101. She's like, do you remember me? And of course I remember. She was very beautiful and regal. As a filmmaker, even then I remember thinking, if I wanted to make a film on Queen Liliuokalani, I would cast her, She's beautiful. And she's like, you remember me? I'm like, yeah, I remember you. She's like, do you remember that promise? I'm like, I do. She's like, well, the next semester I got pregnant. And my mom wanted me to have an abortion. My boyfriend's mother wanted me to have an abortion. And my boyfriend wanted me to have an abortion. And they forced me into a car. And they drove me to Planned Parenthood. And the whole ride there, I kept hearing everything you would say in class over and over in my mind. And keep your promise. The promise is to your baby. And when we got to Planned Parenthood, they opened the door, and I ran, and I ran, and I ran. And I caught the bus home. Haole boy, meet your promise. And she turned to her son. She turned to her son. I envy you. As high school students who are going to be going to college, you're in a real position to affect real social change that impacts the most vulnerable members of the human family, the child in the womb and her mother. And so when I think of the promise I made Katie and the promise I asked this young girl to make, I just want to end by asking all of you a promise, to make a promise. Right now, I want you to make this commitment to yourself that you will never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, ladies, subject your child to the violence of abortion. And men, that you will never threaten, coerce, manipulate, make a woman feel insecure or vulnerable, to pressure her, to push her into choosing the destruction of your child. Make that promise. Thank you very much. God bless you.